All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Alice Jack from the League of Women Voters of Brookhaven. As you know, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We do voter service. This is one of the kinds of voter service that we do. We don't support either a party or a candidate, but we do study issues and take positions. Now tonight, it's a very simple format. The candidates will each make a 2-minute opening statement, and then I'll open the floor to questions. The last question will be at 8:45, and they'll have 1.5 minutes to answer. Now, I ask you that you make sure your questions are questions. I will squelch you if you start making a speech from the floor.
Is there any circumstance under which you'll squelch us?
No.
Okay, good. So we get the rules straight.
No, but Nancy will hold up the time things, and
Right.
and if you keep going over, you know, that's what I've got my little gavel for.
Gotcha.
And I ask that the questions be relevant to this election. No personal questions, no loaded questions. And if questions become repetitive, I'll tell you, okay, we've exhausted that, let's go on to something else. So let's see. We didn't decide who was going to speak first. Does it matter?
Doesn't matter to me.
Go ahead. I went first last
Okay.
time.
Okay.
We did this
Oh,
last
all
time.
right.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Is this on? Yes. Okay. Welcome to Rocky Point for those of you who are not from Rocky Point, and those of you who are, good evening, neighbors. As I am a resident of Rocky Point, I've been a resident of the North Shore of Brookhaven most of my life. I spent an early part of my life in Southampton, but I spent my entire life in the 1st Senate District. A little bit of background about me, for those who don't know me. I put myself through college, first Suffolk Community College and St. John's University, where I got my Bachelor of Science degree. Then I got a law degree from Toro Law. And then I have a MBA, Master's in Business Administration degree with distinction from New York Institute of Technology. I put myself through school while working full-time up to 3 jobs at a time. So I know what it's like to have to try to survive here on Long Island. My husband and I, my husband works right here in Rocky Point for a small business owner, we understand what it's like to try to survive every day. And it's even worse for kids now who are going to college. They can't always stay here. And we need to be able to provide the opportunities for them to stay here, where they can have cost-effective housing. They could, the taxes are just too high right now. We got to make sure that we bring the taxes down so they can afford the day-to-day living here on Long Island. And that is the new future for Long Island that I want to see. Over the last 30 years, our taxes have gone up over 550%. That is not sustainable. We need some change. We need some new ideas. I will bring that to the New York State Senate, and I look forward to serving you, and I look forward to talking to you tonight. And I do want to thank the League of Women Voters of Brookhaven for moderating this event tonight, and the VFW Hall as well for hosting it. So thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you all.
Thank you, Alice. And thank you, I want to say thank you also to the League of Women Voters. We had a forum last night in Southampton, also hosted by the League of Women Voters, and you just offer such a great service to the community. I appreciate it. And thank you to the VFW. Congratulations, Joe, on your upcoming award from Congressman Bishop. Well deserved, the mayor of Rocky Point, right? So thank you for hosting us. And I want to thank you all for coming. I know you'd much rather be cozy at home watching Mitt Romney. So I appreciate your sacrifice. Excuse me. I am Councilwoman Bridget Fleming from Southampton. I have been on the Southampton Town Board since March of 2010, and I was recently re-elected to that post. I was an assistant district attorney for almost a decade. I was a prosecutor of sex crimes, and then I was the chief of a unit that prosecuted fraud in public programs, in welfare, food stamps, Medicaid, and public housing. I am running for the New York State Senate because business as usual has failed us in Albany. It doesn't work for the middle class, and it won't leave us with an Eastern Long Island that, oh, I'm being told it's
No,
time.
she made a mistake.
Okay, thanks. Won't leave us with an Eastern Long Island that is the kind of Eastern Long Island we deserve, a place with plentiful good jobs, with quality schools, and a healthy environment. The incumbent senator has been in office for 36 years. He has proved that he has become part of the culture in Albany and that he no longer is responsive to the needs of the 1st Senatorial District, but instead responds to the needs of the special interests. He has overseen steady tuition hikes and failed to protect our economy while he continues to vote for his own pay raises. You know, we've never had a female senator from Suffolk County, and as a matter of fact, the last female senator from all of Long Island was in 1984. Meanwhile, the majority in the New York State Senate has turned its back on issues of women and our families. I will fight for the 1st District more than you're seeing right now. We're going to bring home the taxes that we pay for the MTA, and I look forward to discussing more of the important issues.
This time
as
it's
we
not a
move
mistake.
forward. Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, I'll open the floor to questions. Who has a question? Yes, in the back there.
One of the problems possibly with you ladies running against Ken LaValle is that you're all attorneys. And Ken LaValle's an attorney, you're both attorneys. There's always some degree of professional courtesy, attorney to attorney, not to mention there are ethical rules about bashing other attorneys in public. However, that's what some of this process is about, that there are some very awful things to be said about Mr. LaValle's reign. Could you please just each give a moment about how you're going to aggressively go up against Mr. LaValle? Because there's so much to
You want? Minute and a half.
Okay. Well, that is a very broad question. I actually ran 2 years ago against Ken LaValle. Some of you may have seen that I was very aggressive in going after his record. Like I said before, our taxes have gone up over 550% in the last 30 years. He's voted for tax increases year after year. Our job regrowth rates here on Long Island are some of the lowest in the state. And there's a numerous other issues. Energy rates are high because he's failing to act when we don't have to be paying the highest energy rates in the nation, in the continental U.S. There's just a host of issues that I brought up 2 years ago when I ran. I jumped into the race at the last minute, taking over for another candidate. It was pretty much debate season. So I went toe-to-toe with Ken LaValle, and I did pretty well at bringing out the issues. I plan to do that again this year, and I know we're going to talk about a number of the issues tonight that we're going to distinguish myself from both my primary opponent and my general election opponent, Ken LaValle. And I agree. We do have to have. He's a 36-year incumbent, elected on my first birthday 36 years ago. So it's been a while, and it's about time. It's tired. We need some new 21st century ideas, and we're not getting that right now. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Greg. And it's a good one. I have to say, though, in terms of professional courtesies, I like to engage in civil discourse, but I am a fighter. I have 6 sisters, and I'm the only Democrat on the Southampton Town Board, so I didn't get here by being nice. I don't worry too much about not being able to show what we need to show. One of the things that we have to educate the public on Ken LaValle's real record. You know, tuition rates have gone up 550% since he's been the chair of the Higher Education Committee. He has consistently voted to raise local taxes. His representation around the Port Jeff power plant has resulted in our electric rates being astronomically higher than they are anywhere else in the country except Hawaii. He failed to come forward for Riverhead and fight for EPCAL development. But the thing that, and he's adamantly anti-woman. His record is clearly anti-woman. The Reproductive Health Act sits in committee. Equal pay for equal work sits in committee. They refuse to let it out, and that's Ken LaValle. The majority of the voters still think that he shares their values, and that's a huge mistake. We need resources, and we have a very effective messaging campaign that we are developing. We have to aggressively fundraise. We've got to get the word out about what Ken LaValle's real record is, because when people see that he is phoning it in at this point, he's answering to special interests, he is not representing us here in the 1st District, they will vote for us.
Another question? Yes.
I'm Debbie Handel from Shoreham, so right next door. I mean, other than the age is an issue, I personally haven't found many of the bills of LaValle to be anti-woman, so the breast cancer coverage, all of that were his bills. The STAR credits that we get on our taxes and LaValle. What differentiates each of you from each other? I don't like the attacking like Randy doing against Tim Bishop. I don't think it's truthful. What makes you able to be more effective up there than someone like Ken LaValle? And distinguish from each other, because that's what we're here for tonight.
Well, you know, your question actually just reflects what I was talking about in my last answer. I think if you look at Ken LaValle's record and the record of the Long Island Nine, the 9 Republican men who represent us from Queens to Montauk, you are going to see that they are not representing the interests of women and our families. They have voted against ensuring access to cervical cancer screenings, to mammographies. They voted against equal pay for equal work. It can't get out of committee. We have the Reproductive Health Act cannot get out of committee. Now, in my view, women have the right to make their own intimate and difficult decisions. That is not a decision that should be made by politicians. It should be made by a woman with her faith, with her medical advisors, and with her family. Nobody can stand in her shoes, and certainly not politicians like Ken LaValle. That's a message we have to get to you. You need to understand, and that's why an aggressive messaging campaign is important. In terms of distinctions, we're both Democrats, Jen and I can't speak for her, but I do think that we support many of the same things in opposition to what the Long Island Nine and Ken LaValle support. However, I do have resources because of my ability to fundraise. I'm a currently sitting public official. I've been an assistant district attorney for 10 years. I've raised $80,000, and Jen hasn't raised even a tenth of that. You gotta do it. It's unfortunate that money plays such a big role, but if we're gonna beat this guy who's been in there for 36 years and convince people that he's not fighting for our district, we need the resources, and that's a big distinction.
Yes, we are both Democrats, so we both do share many democratic values, including the women's rights, women's equality, as my opponent just stated. However, there was an issue that came up yesterday that we're a little bit different on, and we're both different from LaValle on as well, and that is the marriage equality issue. Ken LaValle voted against it. Thank God it passed. We do have equality in our state now, and which is something that is wildly popular with the suburban community. It polled very well before the bill passed. The difference between my opponent and I, we both agree with marriage equality. However, my opponent said yesterday that if the majority of the constituents were against it in her district, she would go with the constituents and vote against it. I personally think that when it comes to civil rights issues, basic human rights issues, you give everyone in your district, it has to be equal for everyone has to be treated equally in your district. You do not allow any portion of your constituents to discriminate against any other portion of your constituents. So I disagree. We do disagree on that issue. Also, I came into this race. I don't think I have enough time to go into this. Maybe I'll go into it later. But there, like I said, we do agree on a number of issues.
We
I'll get
didn't
into a little bit
plan
more
on
of
any.
what the differences are, because I don't have time to go into that
I
right at the
forgot
moment.
about that.
Thanks.
I've just been reminded that we forgot to allow time for rebuttal, and I think that's, called for. So you can,
We did 3. Last night we had a red card and we could use we
Well,
could do like
Up
2.
to 3 times, yeah.
yeah, Southampton is much more organized than Brookhaven.
I don't know, this is good so far.
No, well,
Let's
You know-
do 2.
I taught college kids for 35
Yeah.
years, and I'm comfortable with a more, free-flowing sort of thing. But I think, yes, you can have a minute to rebut, okay?
Thank you.
Each one, yeah.
I'm a little bit surprised that Jennifer mischaracterized what I said last night about marriage equality, because it is an issue that is deeply resonant to me and my family. My sister Kate died in an accident a few years ago, and her lesbian partner of many years was not allowed to be in her hospital room as Kate was dying. The good news is that she was allowed in, but what happened after that was, after Kate passed away, my sister-in-law, Charlene Strong, testified in the Washington State Senate. This is where it happened in Seattle, and in support of a domestic partnership law that would allow partners to be together in difficult times like that. That actually ended up being the precursor to the Washington State Marriage Equality Act. So this is an issue that is extremely dear to me, and I absolutely support marriage equality. What I said is, having been an elected official for some time now, having sat in rooms such as this with civic, I'll have to finish this later because it's really important. You have to listen to your constituents. You also have to vote with your heart. So I want to finish that, but thank you.
Okay.
If she agreed with me, I don't know why she argued with me yesterday on the issue. She stated that you have to adjust, I believe was the word that she said, when your constituents do not agree with it. If they do not agree with marriage equality, she said you have to adjust as a representative. And normally I agree. When most issues, yes, absolutely, it's the constituents that control. You are representing the constituents of your district. But when it comes to a basic civil right, a basic human right, you can, for instance, say majority of your constituents wanted segregation somewhere in this country. You don't support that because it's not right, because it disenfranchises other members of your district. It's all about equality for everyone in your district. When it comes to those issues, that's where you have to draw the line. Otherwise, absolutely, if you're looking at what your constituents want, it's not about your personal opinion, it's about your constituents. But you do have to make sure you are always putting your constituents first.
Next question. Yes.
My name's Anita Boyer. I live in Southampton. I'm 25, and currently my living situation is that I can either live with my parents, live up to 45 minutes, an hour away from where I work, or live with 3 random people that I find on Craigslist. And I know, Jennifer, you mentioned this in your opening statement, so I was just wondering if you guys could give me a couple ideas that you might have to help young people like myself in the situation that I currently am finding myself in, living with my parents. We went to school, we graduated, and now we're home, and we want to continue living in that freedom, and we can't afford it. And the jobs aren't there, the affordable housing isn't there, rental properties aren't there. And let me tell you, the ones that are out there are not okay. I had my house condemned last week, so.
Wait, whose turn is it? I don't
I
know.
guess it's me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear about your home. We hear these stories often now. Like I said, the foreclosure, some of the highest in the state is right here on Long Island. The foreclosure rates. People are losing their homes, and young people cannot. They get out of college and they can't get jobs, and that's not their fault, and that's not something that necessarily is anything you can do right now any more than you're doing, because I'm sure you're doing as much as you can, as are most youth getting out of college. That's up to the elected officials. That's up to those of us who want to serve you, right? Like I said earlier, here on Long Island, I don't think I went into in depth, but I'll say that we send more of our taxes and revenues up to Albany than we get back in return. For upstate, the opposite is true. Down here on Long Island, we are subsidizing the rest of New York State. Ken LaValle has said nothing about this for years. He's allowed this to happen. I'll tell you, it's a political reason. The upstate New York is the base for the Republican Party, and they need to support their base. So that's the first thing we need to do, is make sure we bring some of the money back down here, because by doing that, the economy is basically like your circular system. The money has to keep flowing through the economy in order for it to be healthy, and just like the blood through your system. And we need to make sure that the middle class consumers have the purchasing power that they need in order to keep the economy going. The middle class consumers are the job creators. So we have to bring the money back down here, get it into the hands of consumers, and make sure they're spending. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's so important to hear. Long Island has lost 5,700 jobs since 2010, when the majority got back in power. And unemployment on Long Island exceeds the rate at the national level and at the state level, and continues to trend upward. It's all about jobs, and it's one of the reasons why you see a real problem in this district. Our senator represents the special interests and the culture in Albany. He does not represent the first district. You can see that, for instance, in the in the situation with the electric rates. Our electric rates astronomically high. What that does is it discourages innovation. It discourages people to bring their industry here and provide those kind of jobs. Not only that, it's one of the reasons also why being a town council person, having served on the town council, is such a good sort of training to represent the district on the state level. I, for instance, saw this issue. I'm liaison to the housing authority, and so I just fought actually yesterday or 2 days ago at the town board level to create rental housing, so that we can, what I did was actually partner with the United Way to create a program that teaches the sustainable building trades to young people so they have marketable skills, and at the same time rehabilitate housing so that we could use it for affordable housing. I set up a teen-run farmers market, same thing, teaching these young people skills that they can go out and market. We've got a lot more to do, but Ken LaValle's not doing it for you. Thank you.
Yes, in the back.
My name is Jonathan Cohen from Maryland. While you're talking about money, can the both of you state what sort of, if elected, what sort of budget reform initiatives do you propose?
Say you a little louder. What?
I'm sorry?
Speak louder.
If elected, I would be interested in knowing what sort of budget reform initiatives.
Budget reform initiatives. Okay.
at the state level.
All right. I think it's
her turn.
yeah. It's your turn.
Good question. You know, having served in municipal government, I can see the issues around that. Certainly, unfunded state mandates is one of the things that has to be addressed if we're going to continue with the 2% tax cap for municipalities and for our school boards. It's impossible to function well without some kind of aid from the state. That's particularly true with the schools, and so we've got to address that with courage. We continue to say that we can cut staffing, that we can continue to provide services while cutting staffing and not raising any revenues. It's a formula that doesn't work, and we have to start being courageous and looking realistically at what our municipalities and what our school districts need if we're going to continue to impose the tax cap. Certainly the MTA tax has to be addressed. I wish the folks in Nassau and the Suffolk County litigation very good luck. It means great things for us if that that finding that it's unconstitutional is upheld. I participated at the town board level in a lawsuit against the MTA to get rid of that tax. And so we have to make sure that repeal, because it's for services that we don't see, we have to make sure that repeal sticks. We need initiatives with regard to job creation, especially job creation in the sustainable building trades, and not only the sustainable building trades, but sustainable energy. We need to provide municipalities and local industry with the kind of incentives and support that they need to bring good, energy efficient jobs here to Long Island.
I believe the question was budget reform initiatives. There are a number of good government groups out there that are pushing for certain budget reform initiatives, and there's a number that I believe that we absolutely need to put forward. One that I've been advocating for a few years now is we must make GAAP the basis for accounting here in New York. That is a must. We also must create an independent budget office in order to analyze, do an economic analysis, as well as provide revenue and expenditure projections for our budgets. We also have to require, where we have all lump sum appropriations and member items, things of that nature, they must be A, fairly allocated, B, they must be itemized, and doing so, that's a transparency issue. It must be itemized in a manner that's public, online, in spreadsheet form for user-friendly, so it could be analyzed. Much more transparency in the budgeting process. It is not very transparent at all. It is not readily available for the general public. We also, there's a few other things. We need fiscal impact statements for every budget bill, which is not being done. It should be done, but it's not being done. A creation of joint conference committees are in existence, but they're not really being utilized, so they need to be utilized.
Who? Yes.
My name's Christine Zicatella-Heron. I grew up in Rocky Point. I currently live in Middle Island. My husband's serving 24 years now in the Navy. He'll be retiring in December. So I want to know, if you were to be in office, what support services, initiatives, things like that for the military, both active and retired, would you support or initiate?
First of all, thank your husband for his service. That's wonderful. Right now, many of our service members, and I know Joe knows about this, they're coming out of the service and they don't have jobs. And we have to make sure we're providing tax credits to businesses that hire service members that are coming out of the service, and continue to do so. We must make sure that there's job training and retraining for these service members. We cannot reward them for their service by bringing them into the pool of unemployed. And that is something that we absolutely must make a priority, and it should show them that we honor them, and we can use their knowledge and experience. Most often, the service provides them with leadership skills that we need to see in our businesses. That will be very useful to our businesses, to grow our businesses. I want to see those skills being utilized and to help improve our economy and create more jobs for other people. So, of course, medical benefits and that nature, we have to make sure we continue subsidizing the appropriate medical care for them as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. It's a good question here in the VFW hall, isn't it? That's a natural one for you, Joe, right? I'm happy to say that with our housing initiatives, like I said, I am liaison to our housing authority, and our housing initiatives, since I've been there, have always included a preference for veterans, and we actually have added preferences for folks who are coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. Because I think it's true, young people are coming back and not being able to integrate themselves into a very, very, very tough job market. So we have an obligation to them to give them preferences such as that. I'm very proud that I've been able to do that on the town level. Something that we have to also be very focused on is particularly when our county and local governments are operating under the 2% tax cap, and you see, for instance, Department of Social Services or mental health being slashed. We need to make sure at the state level that those services are supported in whatever way they have to be. We have more and more vets coming home injured, either with brain injuries or issues that come from the IDEs or post-traumatic stress injury. Those folks need our help and they need our services. And if we are asking, once again, local and municipal governments to provide services without the proper staffing, we have to make sure that we're somehow filling those holes. One nice thing about services for vets is that there's usually political support for it. I certainly find that on the town board with, for instance, the housing preferences. So that's our obligation, to make sure we push on that and make sure that those folks who've worked so hard for us are being taken care of.
Yes. I can't believe that Rocky Point is quiet. Rocky Point has no much there. Yes.
This is actually a double question. Your question is, would you support, first, the public finance bill that's expected to be voted upon by the legislature this coming December, which is modeled on the New York City bill, giving $7 each candidate for every $1 raise, thereby increasing the diversity of support? And the second part is, would you support the resolution to ask Congress for a constitutional amendment overturning the Citizens United ruling by the Supreme Court, which says that corporations are people and money is speech, and that any amount of money can be spent by any entity at any time to support or disparage a candidate, which puts our government up for sale to the highest bidder?
Can I answer, excuse me, can I answer the second question first? I actually have sponsored a resolution at the town level asking that the state ask Congress to send back an amendment to the Constitution that we could then pass by referendum to get rid of the Citizens United decision. There is no question that this unlimited spending has brought a terrible tone as well as a true distortion of the political process, and it's stealing our votes without a doubt. I also, besides the public financing, what was your first question?
The first was on public finance.
Oh, the first was public financing, right. I definitely support that. I have to say, you know, it's one of the issues between me and Jennifer. You hate to say it, but money just really matters. And it shouldn't matter to the extent that it does. We've got to take it out of the equation. Right now, we have to live with the game. We have to play the hand we're dealt and live with the game we have. But we've got to change it when we can. Our opponent, Ken LaValle, just got $76,000 in his July filing. He lists $76,000 from industry PACs. Those are people whose business council sits down and writes the checks when it's time to write the checks, right? They write 500 to Flanagan, 500 to Skellos, 500 to LaValle. And so it keeps because the folks only have 2-year terms, they are closely tethered to their funders at all times. And you find that somebody like a 36-year incumbent is spending much more time satisfying the interests of the Albany insiders game than they are the district that they should be responsive to. Great question. Thank you.
I'll also start with the second question first. That's easy. Citizens United must be overturned. I agree. As far as public financing of campaigns, absolutely. I am a strong supporter of public financing. We need regular people to be able to run for office, not just the wealthy, not just those who are catering to special interests. Because once you start taking money from special interests, they expect something in return. And that's what happened here. And special interest sometimes includes parties. And that happened here a few years ago with the Democrats in New York City, how they control what happened here on Long Island. they instituted the MTA payroll tax here on Long Island, and they didn't mind their candidates campaigning against it, as long as when they got elected, they fell in line and supported this MTA payroll tax without giving us any extra benefits. And I stood against that. I stood against my own party in New York City, as did many Democrats out here. Unfortunately, we lost 2 senators because of it. They were associated with the city Democrats. But I had quite a few situations where I stood up against my own party despite losing campaign contributions from New York City because of it. I even, just to give you an example, I had a meeting with the Working Families Party early on when I was going to start to run, and they got upset with me when I said I wanted to bring back our fair share of state aid here to Long Island. I actually got yelled at in that meeting and implied that they would not endorse someone with that position, and I knew then that I was going to be facing a primary, especially after having a similar meeting with the New York City Democratic contingent. So that is something that I will not sell out Suffolk County for New York City campaign contributions, and that's.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Michelle Lindsay Lynch. I grew up in Rocky Point. I'm now resident with Ed since being married. I'm also the co-chair of the Regional Council of Long Island Working Family Party and on the executive board. I was in this screening that you're referring to, and all the people, just to be clear, there were 3 residents from your district, and all the other people that were in the screening were residents of Nassau Suffolk County. So I don't recall anybody yelling at you, and as a resident in this first district, I am concerned, and we were the ones that would spearhead for the tax fair share.
Do you have a question?
The question is, what screening were you at that you were saying that was happening?
I'll answer that. It wasn't the screening, it was a meeting. I was called by the Working Families Party in, I want to say, January or February of this year. It was long before the screening, and I had no primary opponent at the time. I was called by them to meet with them, and it was about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 people in the room, and they proceeded to, in a sense, screen me. I thought it was a meeting, but they proceeded to screen, and so I respect the fact that you're asking the question, because I know it's confusing. There was a screening and a meeting. The meeting preceded the screening, and one of the members, I'm not going to say any names, but one of the members got very upset with me when I said that we need to bring our fair share back to Long Island, and I'm not going to go into the details of what she said, because again, I want to maintain her privacy, but I was yelled at. It wasn't just, I was yelled at for that position.
Oops. Do you have a comment?
I wasn't there.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm George Lynch. I'm a 5th-generation Long Islander from Quiet. I'm trying to pick up on what the lady from Shoreham started, trying to get at the differences between the two of you. And to me, it's not just Ken LaValle. We all know that there are a lot of bad actors in the legislature. We need only look at this week's papers to see the current crop of disgraces. And we also know that these people have very long experience in backroom dealing and obstruction and pork barrel politics and things like that. They got very good at it, very good at the indirection that conceals it. So what I wanted to know is, how does each of you feel that your particular background equips you to deal with these people who are really experts in legislative behavior?
Thank you.
Interesting.
I am very happy to say that I've been able to be quite effective on the Southampton Town Board, even though I'm the only Democrat on the board. Look, when I ran recently, I was the only Democrat on the Democratic ticket. It was all Independence Party members and myself. Now I'm the only Democrat, so I can't operate along party lines, or I would do nothing. I could, get coffee maybe, but I couldn't get any votes. So that's one thing. And I have learned, I'm a trained mediator, and I was a fraud prosecutor. And, you know, I organized large-scale investigations into public fraud. That meant organizing law enforcement. We'd sit at a big table. I'd have the federal government. I'd have our city government. I'd have the AG's office. And we had to all get along, cover the territory, and get the bad guys, basically. And I think we did an extremely good job. Not only that, but I've learned on the town board as a mediator how to approach folks. For instance, if I could quickly do the $30 million bond authorization. We wanted to pass a $120 million bond authorization that over 4 years would allow us to buy open space. The folks on the conservative members of the town board were saying they didn't want to take on debt, but this was with the 2% transfer tax. It wasn't an additional burden to the taxpayer, and we would be buying hard assets at great prices when the market rates were so incredibly low. So it was critical for me to do this, to get it passed. It's just excellent financial management and would save our environment and our water quality. My time is up, but I'd love to tell you maybe afterwards how I managed to work with them and figure out how to do it. As a fraud prosecutor, as a current public official, I believe that I have the toughness and the understanding to work in a courageous way and not buckle under to the special interests.
Not to my gavel either.
Or your gavel.
Okay.
Oops, yeah.
We're not running for Attorney General, we're not running for DA, we're running for State Senate. We're not going to be prosecuting anyone in the State Senate. You don't need to be a prosecutor to be a good senator. You do need to be a good ethical person. Right now, the same people, New York City contingent of the Democratic Party who are supporting my opponent, their group has, since April, has had 4 of their members, one this week alone, indicted or convicted of crimes. That is something that has to end. I would not associate myself with those people. We need something different. So it's about how you associate and your own ethical background. And I'm not saying my opponent has any bad ethics. Don't worry. I'm not saying that at all. But that for either of us, that's what's important, not our prosecutorial background. Although my job, actually, I am a trial attorney, and I can't talk about it because of my job, what I do. But there is an element of fraud defense there. So I, in a sense, do have a similar background in that way. Not that I think it makes much of a difference. Mediation, I also have a mediation background as well. I've been trained in mediation and been a big proponent of ADR. But my opponent actually has not demonstrated that on the local level. She had an opportunity to work with a local business owner who was in violation of some codes, who was willing to work with the town. She insisted on not only selective enforcement of this one business when many others were in violation of these codes, but wanted to immediately litigate, take this man to court. That litigious attitude is not conducive to mediation.
Do you want?
Yeah, I need to.
You need to rebut.
That one I need to answer. Thank you. 2 things. First of all, with regard to the allegation, shall we say, that I'm supported by the New York City Democrats, I have a lot of support here and throughout the state because people think that I have the possibility to right our government to a certain extent, and certainly to bring government back to Long Island and back to the first district. So that's number one. I was recently honored with an award by Sustainable Long Island, which is a Long Island group, for an award that's called the Getting It Done Award. And it's an annual award, and the language behind that award is for public servants who have proven that they can take projects off a page and serve their community. They just gave that to me for my work in Flanders and Southampton. Not only that, but Dick Amper, who is the head of the Long Island Environmental Voters Forum, which is another group that has endorsed me. Last year, you can go and see this on my website, last year he said that I was one of 2 of the best council people in the 13 towns on Long Island. And why? Because as a sitting town council person, I represent Eastern Long Island and Eastern Suffolk County. So the fact that I have widespread support, I think, is based on the fact that I'm an intelligent, hardworking person with excellent job experience to do the job. But I certainly have plenty of support in the community as well. I haven't had a chance to answer the other allegation, which is false. Can I turn in my rebuttal from like the next question?
Sure.
It was a big one. I have to defend myself.
Okay.
Is that
okay with
okay?
As long as your opponent agrees, it's,
Thank you, and I
I agree.
appreciate that, because I appreciate the opportunity to set the record straight, because you're absolutely wrong. That particular restaurant has been it's been in violation of the code for this is his third season. He's sitting on the water. He gets his septic pumped twice a week, because whereas his certificate of occupancy says that he can have 17 to 21 people in the restaurant, he has more than 200 people in the restaurant almost every night. There have been last year we worked with him on the parking issue, and those of you who are from Southampton know this well. But this year the time had come to protect the industries of the East End, like shellfishing and fin fishing and the resort industry, and save our water from folks who are completely abusing our zoning code and not paying attention to the septic requirements of the code. We gave him 3 years, Jennifer, before I said, okay, somebody's got to stop this because it's gotten out of hand. And I will not buckle into the special interests who say that you need to just ignore folks who are hurting our waters.
Well, first
We
of
have
all,
rebuttal to rebuttal?
yeah,
yeah, here we go. Hey, you got 2 rebuttals. So
this is a debate.
Okay.
There was this particular individual has, and this is a town issue, but it's just going to show the mediation, that if she can't bring the mediation skills to town level, how is she going to bring it to state government? This person has been working, saying they're going to fix this problem. They just need to get past this season. They are pumping out twice a week. And there's no proof that they are polluting anything. She hasn't gotten the facts before she's making the accusations. And what restaurant in the Hamptons doesn't go over capacity in the summer? This is selective enforcement. This is something that if the person's willing to work with the town, why not? Why try to shut them down during the busy season, which hurts not only that business, but it hurts the economy of the local town. So that is what you need to have those skills to say, you know what, I will negotiate with you. When you have a willing person who's working, he wants to make the changes as soon as the season is over, which is just around the corner. Why waste town resources for costly litigation when it's just not necessary or called for? And that's what we don't want to see in Albany. We don't want to see people that are wasting resources just to grandstand on an issue. Thank you.
Okay, I am ruling that question is closed.
I support that.
Okay, another question? No?
Yeah, there is
Yes, there, in the front, and then in the back.
I'm Leo Baggett from Shoreham, and I lived in Long Island a long time ago, but now I've just come back a year ago, so I'm new. I have a kind of a longer range, a more philosophical question. You've explained before tonight how money drives success in elections more than ever, and how long-standing incumbents sometimes become obligated to special interests because of that support. I wonder, how long do you think a person can stay in office in the Senate and continue to represent her constituents?
I don't know. I don't
I'll
know.
let you go.
That's a great question. The thing I like the best about the question is you said represent her constituents. Very nice. Very nice. It's a great question, and I don't think there's a black and white answer. The question is, how deeply entangled do you become in insider politics? How closely are you tethered to your funders? I think 36 years pretty much is clear, but whether it's 2 decades or 1 decade, it is hard to say. What we and we've all seen. I mean, I think we've seen some long-term public servants who have continued. I worked for a district attorney who worked. He was 91 years old when he retired and had been in office since 1976. He was one of the most courageous, fearless public servants I've ever known, and I'm totally and completely honored to have served under Robert Morgenthau and learned so much from him. But, you know, I think the question just has to be, are you fighting for the district, or are you dialing it in and maintaining your position within your political party? You know, somebody who's been in office for 36 years and doesn't fight to bring, for instance, electric rates down in his district, or fight for Riverhead on the EPCAL issue, or fight to get our fair share of the school aid formula. Why are we sending our taxes upstate? Well, maybe it's because Ken LaValle is much more interested in maintaining his viability within Albany than he is. He's dialing it in. He's taken us for granted. And that's one of the reasons why it's great that we're pushing him and that we're going to knock him off in the election.
Okay, as I said, that I turned against my own party because I knew that they instituted 2 years ago. We lost 2 senators because they were forced. They were, the word she used, tethered to our city-centric party. The local party, people support me in the North Fork. Their full support. Many other Democrats in this district are supporting me. And because they know that I am independent and I'm willing to stand up for Suffolk County even against the city-centric party, and that's what you have to do in order to maintain that independence. You have to make sure you have a candidate that is willing to stand up to the party, even though they're losing those campaign contributions from New York City. And I did that. I proved myself in that. I mean, if you go back in history, FDR, he was a state senator here who did that. He ran independent, and he won re-election where others lost that were not independent for the party. We need that again here in New York. We need independent. People are not afraid to be independent. I am not afraid to be independent, and that is how you get rid of those strings attached situations. I have no strings attached, and that's going to be me going into Albany. I have a good foot in. By the way, there's also a few other Democrats that did separate from the Democratic Party, the conference, a couple of years ago because they were fed up, just like those of us here in Suffolk County were with the city-centric Democrats. So there is precedence right now in Albany for independent Democrats. I'll be the only one from Long Island, though, so we need our independent representation right here.
Yes.
Upon us without any services was really a problem. And transportation on the east end of Long Island from here on out, from Ronkonkoma on out, is really bad. There was a group that was formed in 2004, Sustainable East End Transit. I wanted to find out what you do to improve transportation out to Montauk and out to Orient. Thank you. You know, if you're elected, what would you do to improve this and to get us more services?
Sure. Very good question. In 2009, a study was conducted, the Volpe study. I don't know if many of you are aware of that. They came up with some great ideas for mass transit for the East End. I do support breaking away from the MTA on the East End and forming our own, the transit authority on the East End. And they have basically they got a coordinated rail and bus network that they've proposed on the East End, and it would be independent of the MTA as it stands now. However, the money that we send to Albany for the MTA much of that, I think it's around, I want to say around 60 million, but don't quote me on that number, I forget offhand. It would, most recent study would, about 40 million of that would be fully sustained in this transit system, and with low cost to the riders. And it's a combination of bus service and kind of a scoot service on the east end. So we'd be reducing costs, we'd be independent of the MTA. That is a program that I'm certainly interested in looking more at and helping support.
Thank you. As a member of the town council, I voted to sue the MTA to get, because that tax is taxation without any compensation, no services. As our assemblyman said out east, you know, the best place to take a nap on eastern Long Island is on the train tracks. Meanwhile, as a member of the Southampton Town Board, I've had to authorize the writing of checks every 2 weeks when we do our warrant to send our money off to Albany and the MTA without any services. We've actually we've had to spend $500,000 since the MTA tax was instituted for services that we just don't get. I think they owe us that money. And by the way, the lawsuit that we initiated, the argument in the lawsuit is precisely the same argument that was used in the lawsuit that's just been found, where the MTA tax has been found unconstitutional. So I've already been in the trenches fighting that tax, and I will continue to do it. It's very interesting that you bring up, Janet, the Sustainable East End and the Peconic Regional Transportation Authority. And one of the reasons why it's interesting in this race is because we have not had the kind of advocate for that necessary service that we need to have, because Ken LaValle is too entangled in insider politics and not fighting for the first district. You know, the governor has set up something called Long Island 2035, and there are regional economic councils that are designed to bring state funding and private funding into initiatives with incentives that will grow our sustainable industry here on Long Island. Of the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been awarded to those regional economic councils, we've gotten less than $7 million, and a huge part of that has gone to Brookhaven National Lab. So transportation is part of that. We've got to fight for the infrastructure, and you deserve a senator who's going to fight for you on the East End with regard to those issues.
Another question? Yes, the gentleman back there.
First, I want to thank both of you for actually doing things that will cut life costs, get us more transparency, both taking action.
I don't know where to go.
Things about that. That is an issue that's actually worth 20 times the economic impact short-term as the tax, maybe infinite impact over the long run if it's destroyed and breaks the camel's back of our economy. But in terms of LIPA, one thing to recognize is that Ken LaValle has been there at every stage of the disaster, including the Shore Power Plant. And these are the kinds of things I would hope to hit him on as well. On the economy, everybody's talking about the cut side, but nobody's talking about the revenue side, especially Ken LaValle, who's seen this district slide from a district that would build lunar modules to one that would have 7,000 acres of vacant land. So, if both of you are attorneys, you don't necessarily have a business background. So my question is really, taking these business perspectives in mind, going towards November, what will you be doing to educate yourself, to realize that we've pretty much done a lot of cutting, and a lot of capping, in terms of the cost side, about the cost side of our problems, and our problems. What are you doing on the economic development side, the creation of money, the importing of money into this area, the importing of money into New York State because we're a debtor state, we're a debtor county, we're debtor towns that can't continue. So that is an issue that is somewhat common to the three candidates whose names are in the ring right now, to Senator LaValle. What can you do? What will you be doing to educate yourself and align yourself with those people in the district that actually have the expertise that can help pull us out?
Whose turn is it? I don't know, whose turn is it? I lose
It's a
track.
great question, and I think I feel very fortunate that folks have already begun to reach out to me, and I've sat down on the Port Jefferson Power Plant issue. I'm very happy to have reviewed the FERC complaint. That is a critical issue because the PSA, the Power Sharing Agreement, is expiring at the end of 2013, and we have got to work hard to repower those legacy plants, to bring in energy efficient power sources, and to bring industry in. It's one of the reasons why I've fought so hard for the health of our waters, is because our shell fishing industry, our fin fishing industry, our resort industry are critical. We can't lose the engines of our economy if we're going to be able to supply young people with jobs and keep our economy going. The green building trades and the green power trades are so critically important, and those folks have also reached out to me. I'm happy to say I am liaison to the Sustainability Committee, and so the Green Homes Initiative is under my watch. That means training people to provide energy efficient buildings, to seal their homes so that they're not losing energy, and also to find other ways to provide clean and renewable energy. I have been involved in the wind energy standardization of industry standards across Long Island so that we can encourage industry to come in. And it's these young, small industries that are so important to talk to one-on-one businesses so that you find out what can we do in terms of incentives, how can we, when you're sitting down looking at your balance sheet, help you want to be in Long Island.
Okay, first of all, I do have a business background. I do have an MBA. After law school, I went back for that. I believe a business background is very important, so I do have the combination of the legal background and the business background to bring with me to Albany to understand a lot of these things. And I've already been teaching myself or learning and talking to people about the issues. You don't run for office, this type of office, for state senate, unless you have a reason to run, that you know the issues and you have an in-depth knowledge of many of these issues. The energy issue is something that I have gotten to know very well, particularly the FERC complaint that my opponent talked about. She's referring to something that op-ed I wrote a few weeks ago on the issue of the power plant in, well, actually, of the lawsuit against National Grid. It's against, the FERC is the Federal Energy Regulation Committee, and that, because National Grid is essentially a monopoly on Long Island, and they've been, it's market manipulation is what they're accused of. And that is something that has kept our rates high, and Ken LaValle has done nothing about this, by the way, and reduced the ability for competition and bringing renewable energies into the fold. So that is something I fully support. Also, there's a restructuring of LIPA that's going to happen, and I'm running out of time. So.
All right. This will be the last question. Okay, over there. I don't know, is louder? Speak up.
One of the reasons that was mentioned that Ken LaValle was largely ineffective from my particular Senatorial District was they beholden to the Republican base of state New York. And there was a lot of banter going back and forth about who's beholden to what special interest and monies and everything. So in the interest of disclosure, I'm sitting here, I went to the New York State Board of Elections campaign finance like this to see. And I looked both candidates up, I was just curious for my own. And I looked at the July periodic report, and I noticed that on Governor Maertz's side, except for one donation, all of them were in the person district. However, on Bridget Fleming's side,
What did you say?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that last.
on Bridget Fleming's side, however, out of a total $11,700 donation, well, not counting a $5,000 donation from New York City, $6,000 were from New York City individuals. And I'm wondering, because, again, being beholden to special interests is so important, and where the money's coming from, what have you, how can we promise to fully represent the first district when we're taking monies in large amounts
Whose turn? Your turn?
I'll take it. I'll take it. It's a
Okay, it's
question,
a question to
obviously a
him, yeah,
question
yeah.
to me. Did you say that Jennifer had only one donation during that period? Okay.
No, he meant,
So, one,
no, from New York City, or outside.
no, but I mean, I think there's,
Outside of the first senatorial district.
oh, I see, right. I've raised $80,000 and Jennifer has raised less than $6,000 and raised very little money in the last period. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is you've got to have resources to get your message out and to get known in the district. It's the way it is, and you've got to do it. We have a lot of second homeowners and a lot of second homeowners who are deeply committed to Eastern Long Island who want to see good representation for the first district. But you should know that 80% of the fundraising that I've done has been from people who have written checks for $250 or less, and the great majority has been from inside the district. I have been supported by folks who have seen me as a representative representing Southampton Town. Sustainable Long Island says that I do get it done for my community. I certainly have worked very, very hard to do that, and I think people recognize that, but I also think we have to recognize that is a decision that you're not going to beat a 36-year incumbent if you're not well-funded. It's not going to happen. And so I'm proud of what I've done so far. I will continue to be aggressive in my fundraising, but I am beholden to no one. Thank you.
First of all, I want to correct something. As of the July filing for this race, I believe, I didn't add it up, but I believe I raised over $11,000. So she hasn't added up my two filings. And as far as our filing, the July filing, it was almost half of her money did come from New York City, and that includes a PAC that is a special interest in New York City associated directly with the New York City Democratic conference that I mentioned earlier. So you don't, that was a PAC that I met with, and they said the condition of that was if I was going to get their support, and this is early on because I started this race long before my opponent did, that I would have to basically pledge loyalty to their conference, and that was an issue I had at the time with certain issues, definitely the Democratic issues, but when it comes to being able to support Suffolk County and not be in the same place as our last two senators here on Long Island, where they got stuck having to support the New York City conference because they made that pledge. So I do not agree that that you need to sell out your county in order to raise money to get elected. Then why bother getting elected because you're not representing your area? Right now, I think that the voters in this district are very that they know that they can. Right now, you don't need a lot of money. They're not going to vote for somebody with a lot of money. You're not voting for somebody to be the best political fundraiser. You're voting for the best senator, and that is what we're looking at. That's why money should not be the choice when you go to the polls. How much money they have, who is going to adequately represent this district, and that is why I am the best candidate for this race.
Can I do a rebuttal?
I think it's useful.
Very quick, because we're,
I just want to say, just so that it's clear, that I think that the PAC that is being referred to is a PAC that was started by Senator Liz Krueger. She is the ranking member of the Budget and Finance Committee, and following the scandals of 2008, she decided to put her own influence into trying to right the wrongs of the political problems in Albany, and she formed something called the No Bad Apples in Government PAC. That PAC seeks out, recruits, and supports folks that she and her colleagues believe have integrity and the wherewithal to fight against the political machine in Albany. She has recruited 4 candidates from throughout the state. One is in Westchester, one is in Ulster County, and one is myself on Long Island. She one of the reasons why Senator Krueger felt that I could be of assistance, like the others who have outstanding qualifications and are likely to beat the opponents that they're challenging to change the culture in Albany, is because I'm a fraud prosecutor in a very good office, and because I have shown the integrity that I've shown as an elected official on the town board. I am honored that folks who want to clean up Albany have reached out to me here in Long Island and asked me to join their ranks, and I look forward to putting the skills that I've put together in my career as a prosecutor and as a person of deep integrity to try to right the wrongs in Albany and make government work for you.
Like I said, they required this allegiance, and that to me, telling someone that they have to turn their back on their own district in order to get their support, that might be good government for New York City, but that's not good government for Suffolk County. So yes, it might be under the guise of a good government type of a PAC, but let's face it, if they're asking you to do that, that's good government for New York City. It's really a New York City-centric political action committee. And now, there's also, as I said before, 4 senators that have been indicted or convicted within the last few months, one of which was just indicted the other day. The senator that she spoke of has so far not come out, as far as I'm aware, has not come out against this particular senator. And if this was truly an organization that was coming out for good government, I'm sure they would have put out a statement by now, and I have not seen a statement to that effect. They did start this PAC with respect to 2 other senators who also happened to be part of the coup that happened a couple of years ago. So there might have been some other issues there that are unrelated to their actual crimes. So you really got to question sometimes the motives, and you look at what they're actually doing.
Okay, it's time, no, that was the last question. It's time now for the final wrap-up. Each candidate will make a 2-minute closing statement. I don't know who's supposed to go first anymore.
You can go first. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming out this evening and having an opportunity to listen to us talk about the issues. It's one thing I do enjoy doing. I love public policy. I love discussing the issues. And I love talking to the members of the community. As I go door to door, which is probably one of my favorite parts of campaigning, is going door to door and of course, discussing the issues. One thing, though, that I want to point out is I am committed to doing this job. This is one of the differences another difference between us. My primary opponent just got elected to her first full term on the Southampton Town Board this year. And for fairness, I will say she got elected the year before in a special election, and then had to run for the first full term on the Southampton Town Board. She's admitted before even being sworn into her first full term to considering running for this race. And I've seen video of her around him giving her commitment to the voters to serve them as their town councilwoman, not mentioning that she's planning on running for yet another position. She's run for, I believe now it's 4 positions, counting this, in 3 years, which she's bragged about loving running for office. We don't need someone who loves to run for office. We need someone who wants to stop and actually do the job they were elected to do. Someone who's actually going to follow through on their commitment to the voters. 2 years ago when I took over, I had very little going for me. I had very little money, and I came in at the last minute in a very bad year. See, at 17 races for re-election that Ken LaValle ran, I came in the top 4. So I know it can be done this year. It's a presidential year. More Democrats come out to vote. That will put me over the top this year. I will have the money that I need to do that when that happens. And this is something that we absolutely must look at who is in the best position to actually serve the constituents, who has a record of commitment. 2 years ago I said I was going to keep fighting. I did. I have the record of commitment. And by the way, I also want to mention that I am involved locally here with the local youth council right here on the North Shore, as well as the Civic right here in Rocky Point. So I've shown my commitment to my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you all for coming and for giving us the opportunity to explain why, for giving me the opportunity to explain why I'm running for the New York State Senate. The question that we need to answer on September the 13th, Thursday, September the 13th, 2 weeks from today, is who will be in a better position to break into the Boys Club and beat a 36-year incumbent in November. As an elected official, I'm running on a proven record of service to this community. I've fought hard for beach access. I've created a teen-run farmers market. I've ensured that local workers get work and utility companies employ them to remove dangerous and unsightly poles. And I've established a partnership with the United Way to teach job skills. As a former fraud prosecutor, I've helped to restore Southampton's damaged credit rating and bring the town budget out of deficit, also to ensure that controls are in place so that tax dollars are used responsibly. The more you look into Ken LaValle's record, the more you see that he is entangled in insider politics. It'll take resources to talk to voters about this and to expose the decisions that no longer put Eastern Long Island first. I have raised money of most of the donations by far have been $250 or less and have come right here from this district. I'm already on the ballot on the Working Family Party line. I'm endorsed by Emily's List, the Women's Campaign Fund, the Long Island Environmental Voters Forum, Communication Workers, Local 1108, and many other groups. They'll help us garner the resources to take on an effective messaging campaign to show that Ken LaValle has taken our votes for granted and instead secured his place in the culture of Albany and his political party. We can't let this moment pass us by. Yes, I'm proud that I'm currently an elected official, and I've run hard for that 3 times for that same position, by the way, not for different positions, and have secured a place on the town board. It is because I am an elected official that I serve, that I have the opportunity to beat Ken LaValle. With the national elections, with the presidential election, with my background and experience, we have the opportunity to break into the Boys Club and make sure women's interests and families on Long Island are represented in the New York State Senate. Thank you very much. Please join me. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you all. This has been a really thoughtful group of voters here, and I'm very impressed with both the candidates and the voters, and I'm very glad I don't have to vote in this primary.